We're talking about the one song that Gaga erased from her discography entirely, and that song is Do What You Want. Hello, you are tuned into Starstruck with Big Pink Energy, who is me. Maybe you're here for a chat about pop culture, music news or gossip, or maybe you're listening because you're secretly in love with me. It's been a while, and I've been quiet, but I'm back now, so it's all good. Don't have to worry anymore. And I'm ready to sit and discuss Lady Gaga with you guys for a very, very long time. So get comfy, get cozy, because today we're talking about something slightly forbidden, slightly taboo, definitely something that we don't talk about too much within the world of Lady Gaga. We're talking about the one song that Gaga erased from her discography entirely, and that song is Do What You Want. Let me say this up front. There is going to be discussion of lots of sensitive topics within this episode. We'll be talking about everything from drugs and substances to sexual assault and eating disorders. So if any of these are particularly triggering for you, please proceed with caution or consider skipping this episode, and I'll catch you another time. It's okay. You don't have to watch it if it's going to make you upset. It's all good. Do What You Want. She officially removed the song from streaming platforms back in 2019. So why are we talking about this now? Well, Do What You Want is part of one of Lady Gaga's most discussed, beloved and infamous albums, ARTPOP. And on her current world tour for Mayhem, Gaga has been closing out the show with a different ARTPOP song every night, meaning we're seeing Gaga dancing on stage and sometimes singing along to songs that we haven't seen her perform to since like 2014. So over 10 years, we've not seen any kind of acknowledgement of some of these songs, and suddenly every night she's picking a different one to dance to on stage. She's also added parts of the songs Aura and Applause to the setlist, as well as fan favourite Summer Boy, which is obviously from the Fame. But this all lines up with everything I've been saying previously about the Mayhem era being the most connected she's been to the fan base in like over 10 years. She's really giving us everything we want this time around, and it feels like everyone has a little piece of her in some way from this era. She's not ignoring or simply just spectating anymore when we tell her like what our favourite songs are. She's really relishing in the fact that she is Lady Gaga, and she's responsible for not just some of the most iconic moments in pop music history, but that she's given us within our circle of like niche super fans. She's given us so much joy over the years with songs that maybe the general public didn't value or appreciate at the time, but we did. We appreciated all of those songs. Well, some of us. Some of us maybe are a little bit older and lived through the art pop era at the time, and we remember quite well its vibrancy, its whimsicality, but also its traumas and everything else from the actual time. I do think there's a split between us guys and the newer fans who've joined a little bit later. You know, maybe they've become a fan from one of Gaga's movies or from her collaborations with Ariana or Blackpink, or even from Abracadabra. You know, they've become a new fan, and then when they've gone back into her discography, they found this crazy album called ARTPOP, and then they've seen at the time that it was considered by some people as a bit of a commercial failure. They've also seen that Gaga herself seemingly kind of abandoned the era, and a lot of promises were made that she didn't come through on at the time. So I know we already know this, but let's quickly recap. Gaga told us there would be music videos for every song on ARTPOP, that there would be an app with all of those music videos on. The app would also have all the stems for all the songs, so fans could make their own remixes. And of course, she told us that she made so much music for ARTPOP that she would be releasing a follow-up album with all of those songs that didn't make the cut for the first one, and this would be called ARTPOP Act 2. I think for some of us, even the words ARTPOP Act 2 are pretty triggering. So, you know, I think to be honest, it was triggering for Gaga too for a very long time, and I wouldn't be surprised if that specifically still is. As much love as she has shown to ARTPOP recently, my understanding is that she still has no intention of releasing these old demos from years ago. And obviously she was asked about it quite recently at the Spotify press conference, so I've just written down the quote, what she said about it, to remind everybody. She said, "So, when I make my records, there is a reason that songs are left off, and it's because some are simply not good enough for you. And I'm not saying that it's a never, but I am saying that I'm not going to take all my demos that I specifically left off the record and just chuck them on an album and put the number 2 on it. But I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm just saying that it's not going to happen like that. I would want to go in, and I feel like it would have to be reactionary. So much happened when we dropped that record as a community. So I feel like we would have to kind of respond to that with the music, which is maybe some of what's on Mayhem. So I would have to, I mean, that was my EDM opus, that record. So I would have to get back in that headspace and complete it. So of course by that quote, some fans have interpreted that as ARTPOP Act 2 is confirmed. And then other people like me have heard that and thought, great, she's finally put it to rest, ARTPOP Act 2 is not happening. To me, it's pretty clear from what she said there that ARTPOP Act 2 is not just sat in a folder on a laptop somewhere waiting to be released. And that is the impression that some fans have had previously, that it was almost packaged up and ready to go and she just, for whatever reason, chose not to go through with it. I think it's quite obvious now that that is not true. To me, it sounds like she had some songs that didn't make the cut on the original album, as she does with every album, because she doesn't release every single song that she makes. So I think she maybe did have intentions of sharing some of them with us at the time and just changed her mind. And you know what, we did actually get to hear a lot of those songs anyway. So some of them were released or leaked by Gaga, like Brooklyn Nights. And then some of them ended up leaking, like Red Flame, which obviously was never going to be released after how controversial Azealia Banks ended up becoming at the time. So, you know, no matter what happened, ARTPOP Act 2 or not, we were never going to get a release of Red Flame featuring Azealia Banks. That was obviously canned. Gaga also said this about returning to old demos during the Spotify press conference. She said, "I think at one point I was feeling anxious and I like drudged up some old demos and I just listened to them and then threw them out. I know it might sound cold, but each one of my albums is a piece of music that I conceive of from start to finish, and it's a moment in time and in my life that's very special. Whenever I say to myself, oh, there's that song, I'm going to put that, whenever that happens, it just never really comes to fruition because it never really belongs." So again, when we put this in the context of art pop, it just doesn't feel like Act 2 is happening for me. However, bringing us back on topic, even just Gaga not just like acknowledging art pop, but actively doing fan service for it at these Mayhem shows is huge progress from where we once were. You might remember she once even tweeted, "I don't remember art pop," which despite being sort of a joke caused mass meltdowns on Stan Twitter that day. You might remember, I remember very well. The era itself honestly traumatized Gaga. And a lot of people forget it was her rediscovery of jazz and collaborating with Tony Bennett that actually helped her survive that period. So much happened in this time. She had just had major surgery after cancelling a world tour. She split with her manager. She was using various substances to cope with her pain and her schedule. And don't forget, she's already battled a coke addiction in her early 20s that she told us about from before she was famous. So becoming a famous megastar as quickly as she did and suddenly having access to drugs on tap like this has to be quite challenging. Now, the first single from ARTPOP was Applause, which was super fun. But I remember her saying she had very limited time to conceptualise and shoot the video. And then it was also part of that major battle for the #1 spot between herself and Katy Perry, who was releasing Raw around the same time. And Raw ended up being the song that got the #1 spot. So despite Applause being a successful song overall, the first single from ARTPOP was already perceived by some people as being a failure just because it didn't outsell Katy Perry. Which, when you think about it now, like where Gaga and Katy are in their careers, I know I've talked about this a lot, but like that's crazy to kind of say that because of this one incident that Katy Perry beats Gaga. It's funny just to like look at where we are now, how that now seems so insignificant, but at the time it was looked at as like, well, Gaga's over because she didn't manage to get the #1 spot, you know? When it came to the next single, Venus was originally planned to be next up, and we were told a music video was coming for that one too. This was another broken promise from the art pop era, sadly, but due to the overwhelmingly positive response to the song, Do What You Want was ultimately going to be the second single from ARTPOP instead. And to be honest, although it didn't reach #1, it's one of those songs that had wide impact rather than being a chart topper. So everyone knew the song, everyone liked the song. And you know what, actually, it did go #1 in Greece and in Hungary. So it did have some international appeal as well. It wasn't like it was something that was just like big in the US. It was pretty big It just might have not like hit the top of the charts everywhere. The song obviously features R. Kelly, and I suppose this is red flag number one. The song existed as a solo version before he was brought in to record his verse. And if you look at the lyrics before his input, the context of the song is just entirely different. Do What You Want wasn't inherently sexual before R. Kelly joined. So as a reminder, I'm sure you guys already know this, but here's the lyrics to Gaga's verse that got cut. So she said, also, and put this in context of her writing this after just like being on the Born This Way Ball Tour and then having to cancel that tour, and then the album being delayed until she recovered from surgery. The lyrics that were cut are, "My bones hurt from all the shows, but I don't feel the pain because I'm a pro. I sink in and then I'm okay because my body belongs to you when I'm on stage." So where she's saying do what you want with my body, in the chorus, the verse suggests that do what you want with my body is directed to the audience and not a sexual partner. But, you know, when you add R. Kelly's verse, and even though that wasn't super raunchy or controversial, really anything he says in the song, it does still add that sexual context to it. So like some of the lines he has in his verse are, "I could be the drink in your cup, I could be the green in your blunt, you're pusher man, I've got what you want, do what I want with your body, back of the club, taking shots, getting naughty, no invitations, it's a private party." So you're now listening to the chorus where Gaga's saying, "Do what you want with my body." You're listening to that with now a sexual context. I don't think with Gaga's original verse where she's saying, "My body belongs to you when I'm on stage," I don't think it gives that meaning. And that's not to say that Gaga's wrong for letting the song become sexual in context or that she can't sing about sex, because obviously, like, let's be really, really clear, she's been adding sexual context to her songs since her debut. Poker Face is a really brilliant example. You know, that's not a song about playing a card game, that's a song about her bisexuality. Regardless, Do What You Want originally was a song about dedicating her whole self to her life as an artist. I think it almost mirrors Applause in that way. If you think about the lyrics being about living for being a performer, for the payoff of being applauded, Do What You Want is almost the other side of the coin. In order to be an artist and a performer, she's dealing with the mental struggles of being in tabloid headlines constantly and physical pain from touring and her demanding schedule. She's fully dedicated her life and her body to her audience. Now with R. Kelly in the mix, the song is still about this, but it's more of like a fun, sexy song. And knowing what we know now about him, it just feels kind of icky. Don't worry, it does get worse. Red flag number two, there were plans for a music video, and the video was going to be shot by Terry Richardson. For those of you who don't know, Terry Richardson is a very famous photographer who was responsible for some of the most iconic images of your favourite celebrities. He had his signature style with a very bright camera flash. He often had his models posing against a completely white backdrop. A lot of his work featured really heavy nudity, and it was just generally very sexualised. He was seen as an icon kind of within photography, and Gaga worked with him pretty early on in her career. He actually went on tour with her, obviously during the Monster Ball and the Born This Way Ball, was capturing like backstage and behind the scenes moments, and some of those images went on to become part of a photo book, Gaga X Terry. Some of you might still have it, I still have my copy. That documented like not just her life on tour, but some of the big moments in the creation of like the Born This Way album. And I remember there's like big moments like Gaga at the Grammys and the VMAs that are in that book. So it really gave fans like a rare glimpse into Gaga's private life. And it was like the first almost glimpse we had of that as fans, I think. He also directed Miley Cyrus's infamous music video for Wrecking Ball, which had her swinging completely naked on a huge wrecking ball. This video was super, super controversial at the time. He has had allegations of sexual misconduct since 2001, and all of this came to a head in 2017 when multiple big publications officially stopped working with him. I think like Condé Nast, Vogue, all these big magazines that had been working with him for years decided to stop working with him, basically. So yeah, who better to direct the video for Do What You Want than Terry Richardson? Now, through divine intervention or someone in the house of Gaga finally speaking up, or God knows what, thankfully the video was scrapped and never released. A few clips of it have leaked, and whenever these clips circulate, there's a ton of negative criticism against Gaga for it. And to be honest, I can't really defend this. And I don't think Gaga herself today would defend it either. The video was going to feature Gaga being put under an anaesthetic, so she would be unconscious, and have a ton of nurses in these like short skimpy outfits dancing around her as her body lies there completely limp in the hospital bed. I can't remember who it was. It might have been TMZ, it might have been another news outlet, but there was someone that had seen the video and they described it word for word as an ad for rape. So let's all thank God that however that decision came about to not release the music video, let's just thank God that that decision was made, because Gaga having this as like part of her career already is kind of a shame. The video really just made it so much worse, honestly. Unfortunately, Gaga did perform the song live a few times with R. Kelly. Luckily, those performances, I don't think there was anything that rapey about those. It was, you know, just a performance of the song with R. Kelly. The choreography was pretty sexual, but it wasn't like non-consensual. It didn't give that, so let's take that as a win. We also have the performance with Christina Aguilera, which I know some fans choose as the version of Do What You Want to listen to now. The Christina one does include original lyrics from the solo version, so again, it's not got that sort of sexual context that the R. Kelly one does. Gaga obviously felt bad for making all these promises for the art pop era, and after scrapping Do What You Want's video, she did release another music video, which was for GUI, which I believe, if I remember correctly, she funded this one herself rather than funding it like through the record label. And I've always thought it's because she must have just felt bad for like promising all of this stuff for the art pop era that just didn't happen. So then I think she was just like, let me close this out with at least one more video. I mentioned Terry's allegations being a hot topic in 2017. Again, they had been public knowledge since 2001, but it was taken more seriously like many years later. Now, R. Kelly has also had sexual assault allegations for years and years and years. He was actually prosecuted on child pornography charges back in 2002. He was acquitted for all of them 6 years later, but what was for sure was that he did marry R&B singer Aaliyah, God rest her soul. She was aged 15 when they got married and he was 27. And because it was the 90s, people blamed Aaliyah for lying about her age. She allegedly said that she was 18. And she got the blame rather than people blaming R. Kelly for being a grown adult man marrying a child. Anyway, they were married in 1994. And R. Kelly, of course, still had a successful career all through the 90s and 2000s. So when Gaga made her song with him in 2013, for the general public, this stuff wasn't necessarily front of mind. It was almost like R. Kelly's history was widely known, but just kind of accepted. And I do honestly think, and I think I even thought this at the time, I think most people would have thought, if he was really that bad, why is he making music and not in prison? Like, it almost can't be as bad as we think it is. Because if it was that bad, surely he wouldn't be on this song. If he's on this song with Lady Gaga and God knows how much else of the music industry he's still collaborating with, you know? Like, similar to P. Diddy, R. Kelly had a lot of credits in the writing and production of major hit songs. So it wasn't even just like his work as a solo artist. If you name a star from R&B, and even like some pop and hip hop artists as well from that era, they've probably worked with R. Kelly or Diddy or both, just being quite honest. And they've probably worked with them at some point, if not multiple times. But sadly for Gaga, when the Surviving R. Kelly documentary came out in 2019, the song most people thought of when recollecting his recent work was Do What You Want. So she was under a lot of pressure to address why on earth she not only worked with him to begin with, but why she had plans for this super irresponsible music video. Did she stand by R. Kelly in the light of these new allegations? There was a lot of pressure for her to speak on it. Now, context, let's remember what happened in Gaga's career between the release of Do What You Want in 2013 and the newest wave of R. Kelly allegations in 2019. That's 6 years. So in those 6 years, she had spoken about her own status as a sexual assault survivor, and she'd released a song about overcoming the trauma of it in Diane Warren's documentary titled The Hunting Ground. Her song Till It Happens to You was performed at the Oscars with a group of 50 sexual assault survivors joining her on stage, and then after the performance they all got matching tattoos of the symbol for sexual assault survivors. It's the one on the back of her shoulder that almost looks like lines going up into a crisscross and back around again. Is that one. A lot of people were pretty angry that Lady Gaga could show up on stage advocating for sexual assault survivors while being the person responsible for a lot of R. Kelly's success in the 2010s. So with all of that pressure building, she did release a statement about the song and her relationship with him. So this is what she posted on Twitter. She said, I stand by anyone who has ever been the victim of sexual assault. I stand behind these women 1000%, believe them, know they are suffering and in pain, and feel strongly that their voices should be heard and taken seriously. What I am hearing about the allegations against R. Kelly is absolutely horrifying and indefensible. As a victim of sexual assault myself, I made both the song and video at a dark time in my life. My intention was to create something extremely defiant and provocative because I was angry and still hadn't processed the trauma that had occurred in my own life. The song is called Do What You Want With My Body. I think it's clear how explicitly twisted my thinking was at the time. If I could go back and have a talk with my younger self, I'd tell her to go through the therapy I have since then, so that I could understand the confused post-traumatic state that I was in, or if therapy was not available to me or anyone in my situation, to seek help and speak as openly and honestly as possible about what we've been through. I can't go back, but I can go forward and continue to support men, women, and people of all sexual identities, and of course, all races, who are victims of sexual assault. I have demonstrated my stance on this issue and others many times throughout my career. I share this not to make excuses for myself, but to explain. Till it happens to you, you don't know how it feels. But I do know how I feel now. I intend to remove this song off of iTunes and other streaming platforms and will not be working with him again. I'm sorry both for my poor judgment when I was young and for not speaking out sooner. I love you. Now, it's up to you if you choose to accept her apology, but for me, I feel like beyond deleting the song from streaming and preventing any other further profit from the song, I'm not sure what else she can actually really do to rectify this. She hasn't performed the song or acknowledged it since making this statement. And even with all the love she's been showing to art pop and that era lately, there hasn't been one mention or nod towards Do What You Want. I've seen a lot of fans rooting for her to play it as an encore song at the Mayhem shows, and I suppose part of me making this episode today is to serve as a bit of a reminder as to why that should not and cannot happen. This song honestly is a stain on her discography. As catchy as it is, and as innocent as the solo or the Christina versions may be, this song really, really hurt a lot of people. And the video, as I say, that would have been an absolute disaster. Regarding some of what Gaga said about her younger self in this statement, I really do believe her, because this isn't the first time she's worked with someone perceived as a legend in their field in this way and just ignored the massive red flags staring at her right in the face. I tweeted this week about a remix she made with Marilyn Manson back in 2009 because a lot of people seemingly forgot or just didn't know that he behaved completely inappropriately with her. And again, at the time, nobody saw an issue with it. This one's pretty bad and honestly makes me wonder what else goes on behind the scenes with women interacting with men in positions of power. I'm going to read out a section of an article Rolling Stone did about Gaga from 2009. There's one man in Lady Gaga's life who's up for pretty much anything she might want. His name is Marilyn Manson and he's newly single. Two stars met not long ago when they recorded remixes of each other's upcoming singles and they hit it off. But when Manson shows up at Gaga's photo shoot late one Monday night, toting a glass of absinthe, an assistant filming him with a flip camcorder, he makes it hilariously clear that he'd like to get to know her a lot better. I want to be that guy, he says in Gaga's dressing room, as she screens her sleekly imaginative new paparazzi video, which has her making out with a studly model. I want to be balls deep. Gaga laughs it off, leaning on his shoulder. Manson points to a wire hanger on a nearby shelf. You're going to need these for the abortion later. Another laugh. I'll give you a cervical exam, he offers minutes afterward. Now, some of you might remember that Gaga revealed when she was raped by a music producer in her early career, the assault left her pregnant and she had an abortion as a result of that assault. I cannot imagine how she must feel about this interaction. The Rolling Stone interview doesn't flag up any negative reaction from her side at the time from his comments. And I really think there's something in how she used to view men in the industry who were perceived as legends or like important figures, because the Gaga of today, I think, would be absolutely horrified by this behaviour. I guess generally though, also, I think society has pivoted the way it looks at men and women in these sorts of scenarios. A lot of the general public kind of accept that rock stars and bands back in the day probably were sleeping with underage girls and whatever else because it wasn't as big an issue then as it is now. Elvis Presley dated Priscilla while she was still in school. Steven Tyler adopted a 16-year-old that he was dating. This was just common behaviour back then. If you're watching the video of this rather than just listening to the audio, I do apologise if the change in lighting, etc. is jarring. I ran out of time before my nail appointment, but I'm back now and I have nice, fresh nails. Wait, let me see if I can bring it in focus. I can never tell from this viewfinder if this is in focus or not, but I have nice new star nails. I feel like I just keep getting star nails now because of the podcast being Starstruck, and they always just look so like graphic and cute. I love them, but yeah, I feel like next time maybe I'll get something with hearts or something to just switch up. I don't know. Anyway, back on topic. Yeah, so Steven Tyler adopted a 16-year-old that he was dating. Yeah, back then this was just common behaviour. I mean, obviously there's Woody Allen as well, is another one I forgot to mention. I think generally that sort of behaviour was just seen as part of the lifestyle of rock stars. And that doesn't excuse it, but what I'm trying to say is that the power and access that men have in the music industry and I guess Hollywood, the film industry, the industry of showbiz, this is something that the likes of ordinary people like you and I think we've only seen the tip of the iceberg of this sort of thing. So Lady Gaga at age 23, you know, she's newly famous. She's recently a victim of a sexual assault that resulted in an abortion from a music producer. Probably she just thought maybe this was normal behaviour of men in the music industry at the time. So maybe when given the chance to work with legendary photographer Terry Richardson, who has a stack of assault allegations, maybe she didn't see that at the time as a big red flag. And when R. Kelly recorded a verse for her song in 2013, maybe she thought that the public had already moved on from what was seemingly over and done with years and years ago. It's hard to say what her frame of mind was at the time, but the sort of landscape of how we view these things as a society now truly has changed. And I'm not saying that makes it okay back in the day. I'm just saying the way we all kind of perceive it now and think about it is very different. As I say, it really was her work with Tony Bennett that saved her. Don't forget, I think she nearly quit music, and I don't think fans take this seriously enough. She really, really was close to just quitting. She was so broken in the art pop era, like I can't stress it enough. And I think the turning point for Gaga was when she split with her manager, Troy Carter, which we obviously don't have all the details for, but we do know she felt overworked, undervalued. She felt more like a product than a person, and she felt completely betrayed by him. If you look at her musical collaborations following this split, they've only either been female collaborators or longtime friends and supporters of hers, like Tony Bennett, Elton John, Bruno Mars. She's very selective with who she works with now. It's taken some time, but she's also cleared out her circle. We now have amazing choreography for the Mayhem era by Paris Gobel, following the departure of Richie Squirrel from the House of Gaga, who also had allegations against him. It takes longer than we as fans maybe would like sometimes. I definitely was waiting on him to be exited from House of Gaga for a long time. But I do think ultimately her heart's in the right place. I think the combination of the R. Kelly situation and the Dr. Luke and Kesha trial that she was subpoenaed into means the Lady Gaga of today is a lot more conscious and careful with her words and where and when she decides to speak on things. And that's for better or for worse. You know, I'm not saying that that's necessarily a positive outcome. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a negative outcome. It's just where we are today. She was very, very traumatised after that trial. So all of that to say, Do What You Want should not be one of the encore songs for the Mayhem show. And maybe you still enjoy listening to the song privately at home or in the car or in the shower or wherever you listen to it. And that's fine. It doesn't hurt anybody. But for Lady Gaga in 2025 to be on stage while that song plays, that would be a complete disaster. Trust me on this, I will be very, very shocked if she decides to do that. And I think a lot of people would be really upset, honestly, and rightfully so. I know we're all really enjoying the art pop fan service, and it's fun to speculate what playing the songs could mean, but there's a reason that this one is being left out, and really it should stay that way. And I think even the solo version and the Christina version of the song, I just still think that would be too controversial. She's literally removed Do What You Want as if it kind of never existed. And yeah, the other songs, however, I absolutely love GUI and Sex Dreams. And to be honest, I think I love pretty much everything on Art Pop. I don't think there's anything on there that I really dislike. Yeah, it has been a joy to see her celebrate this music with us. I know for her that was a really painful time, but fans that were around that enjoyed it, like, we saw something special at the time. So yeah, it's nice to see this now. Art Pop as an album is about escapism through the context of Gaga's life as a famous pop star. And that's the same messaging that's been carried through to Chromatica and now to Mayhem. It's just with each new album, the messaging and the methods that she uses to tell the story have been refined and refined. You know, she's putting in new metaphors and motifs, whatever she's doing to bring the vision to life. That kind of changes with each record, but the story is kind of the same. We had the creation of Chromatica, which was both like a state of mind and a fictional planet. And now we have the duality between Gaga and the Mistress of Mayhem, which, as I theorised in the first episode of this podcast, is a recurring theme that we can actually trace back to her debut. You know, I might not support badgering Gaga for ARTPOP Act 2, but I do think it's lovely that we can enjoy the songs together knowing that she's not hurt listening back to them anymore. Like, she looks really, really happy on stage listening to all of those songs. And I don't know what's next for the encore songs when the tour resumes in a few days, whether we're playing ARTPOP again from the top, or if she'll be diving into like all of her music. By the time she gets to the UK, who knows, she might even play Starstruck at my show. That would be really, really cool. I would lose my mind, honestly. But yeah, it's a fun little post-show ritual that I'm glad she's made part of the tour. I've spoken about this a lot, but Mayhem for me is Lady Gaga not just accepting that this is who the fuck she really is, but it's about her using all of her talents and her creativity as a superpower altogether. She's Lady Gaga both on and off the stage, and she's also Stephanie Germanotta. They are the same, and it's not that, you know, she puts on the wigs and makeup and suddenly becomes Lady Gaga, and then when she takes it all off, she's Stephanie. And we've understood that for years now as fans, but the general public have always had a really hard time trying to understand that because they almost see it as like an alter ego or a persona. The truth is that she's an artist and she's all of these things at once whenever she chooses to be, because it's not an act, it's really who she is. She's a singer, writer, dancer, producer, artist, actress and a visionary, and dipping into one thing doesn't have to take away from another. The best example of this, I think, was Harlequin. We saw during A Star Is Born that Gaga was in like very, very serious actress mode. I think she was just desperate to be taken seriously because obviously it was her first big film role. I know she'd done some acting bits before in her career, but this was like her first debut on screen as like a lead actress. So I think she was really, really, really wanting to be taken seriously and not kind of follow the route of many pop singers who go into acting who just can't really nail it. So she definitely had something to prove, and in doing that, it felt very separate from her music career. But looking at how she was in Harlequin, she was so comfortable being both Lady Gaga the performer, Lady Gaga the singer, and Lady Gaga the actress. She was just comfortable being all of it at once or dipping into one thing when she was feeling like it. Even if Joker 2 had negative reception, she was still that sort of outwardly confident Lady Gaga, not just kind of like one side of her. If that makes sense. I hope it does. At the end of the day, she's Lady Gaga and nobody else can do what she does. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening to this one and that the discussion of the dark stuff hopefully wasn't too heavy. I think it is important to discuss it every now and then because it just gives so much context to where she was in her artistry at the time and what's led up to where she is right now. This really, really is a special time to be a Lady Gaga fan because we've seen her in these low moments and not just been there when she's gotten back up again, but now we're really, really seeing her thriving. But yeah, I hope everyone listening has been enjoying the Mayhem era. I hope the ticket gods have blessed you with the opportunity to see a show in real life, and don't forget to check out my Etsy page if you are going, because I've got a couple of cute little goodies that might help you with your tour looks. And let me know what you want me to talk about next. Lots of new pop music coming out with all the new pop girls soon that, you know, I've been keeping an eye on. Doja, I know Chapel and Sabrina are releasing soon. There's tons of people. Who else? Cardi, even Demi and Taylor. I don't really listen to them, but if you want me to talk about them, let me know. I probably wouldn't actually have that much to say about Demi and Taylor, but if you want me to listen, I can. But yeah, lots of new stuff to discuss coming out soon in the rest of the pop world. And yeah, if there's any Gaga stuff too that you want me to talk about, just let me know in the comments. You know, I love reading them. I will always be reading your comments. But yeah, I know I've been quiet lately, but I am trying to get back into the habit of posting a little bit more on here and on TikTok, so bear with me. I've had my birthday, and as a Leo, it's been very, very important that I do the birthday thing properly, so that's part of why I've been away. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Best wishes and kisses, and I'll see you soon.